Confession of a former CJNG hitman. They pulled me out of the car with rifles aimed at my chest. No words, no accusations, just the silent verdict of betrayal. I recognized the faces men I had bled with, killed with, eaten with, in the dusty safe houses of Colima. But tonight, they weren't comrades. They were the execution squad. The rain came down in sheets soaking my shirt, blurring the edges of the warehouse lights as they shoved me inside. My heart slammed against my ribs. I thought this was it. I thought the cartel had finally decided I was worth more dead than gone. And then I saw her. She was seated at a narrow table, dry and untouched by the storm that had soaked the rest of us. No guards, no weapon in hand, just her eyes cold as obsidian, tracking my every move. She looked exactly the same as the first time I saw her, mid-50s, streaks of silver in her hair, a quiet elegance that didn't belong in this world of blood and fire. La Dama. I had heard her name whispered 100 times, but only ever seen her once before. Even El Mencho bowed his head in her presence. And now I was in her sights. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't threaten. She didn't need to. Her power didn't come from guns or body counts. It came from knowing everything, everything. She listed calmly the money I had hidden in Jalisco, the contacts I'd been reaching out to in Tijuana, the fake IDs I had printed under a new name. She knew my mother's address, my sister's school, the scent of my fear. Then she slid a pistol across the table, slow and deliberate. "You can still serve," she said, her voice like glass. "Or you can run with this. But not before you carry out one last task." Behind me, 5 men were bound and gagged. Government agents, investigators, ghosts we were never supposed to see. That was the moment I knew there was no such thing as leaving the CJNG. Not when she was watching. Not when every move I made was already a line in her ledger. I did what she asked. I always did. And in return, she let me go. At least that's what she said. But I haven't slept a full night since. You think El Mencho was the boss? That he pulled the strings and ran the show? No. He answered to someone else. And I'm going to tell you who that was. I was born in a place where hope dried up faster than the rain. Michoacan wasn't just poor, it was forgotten. Dust clung to everything, our boots, our rooftops, our dreams. My mother sold mangoes by the roadside, her hands cracked from sun and bleach. My older brother worked in the avocado fields, bruised and underpaid, just like every other boy who didn't want to starve. We lived in a 2-room shack on the edge of town. At night, I'd hear the trucks pass blacked-out SUVs, rumbling over dirt roads heading to God knows where. Nobody asked questions. In our world, curiosity got you buried faster than cancer. My brother once said the only way to get ahead was to disappear into the smoke, either go north or go narco. He tried the first. They sent him back in a black bag. He was 17. That was the day something cracked inside my mother. She stopped crying, stopped talking, just sat by the window, watching the same empty road waiting for a son that wouldn't return. I think that's when I began to hate the world for what it had taken and what it had never given. School was a joke. The teachers were underpaid and overworked, and most of my classmates either dropped out or joined the local Halcones lookouts for the plaza. I didn't want to be a lookout. I wanted more. I wanted power, money, respect, something to protect what little I had left. I remember one night we had just finished eating boiled rice with nothing else. My little sister asked if we could have meat tomorrow. My mother didn't answer. She just handed her the last mango from the basket and went to bed. That night, I decided I was done being poor. It didn't happen instantly. At first, I started moving things, packages, messages. Mostly for an older guy named Lalo, who ran errands for people with nicer cars and thicker wallets. I knew what was in the bags. Everybody did. But nobody said it out loud. Saying it out loud made it real, and reality was something you didn't survive in. Lalo was different, quiet, observant. He didn't carry guns or threaten people. He just listened. And when he spoke, people shut up and listened back. One afternoon, he asked me to ride with him to a small safe house near the edge of town. It looked abandoned, but inside the air smelled like fresh paint and gasoline. There were men inside, armed, calm, efficient. One of them asked me if I was ready to stop running in circles and step into something real. I didn't answer right away. But when I looked at the dirt under my fingernails, the holes in my shoes, the mango stains on my little sister's shirt, I nodded. That was the first time I heard the name Mencho. Not from TV. Not from rumors. From a man with a scar under his eye and a pistol on the table, saying the name like it was sacred. "You do this right," he said, "and one day you might be close enough to him to make a difference." I didn't know then that there was someone even closer, someone more dangerous, someone whose name no one dared to say out loud. Not yet. The safe house in Zapopan didn't look like much from the outside. Faded stucco walls, rusted gate windows covered with brown paper. But inside, everything was clean, organized, silent, and tense like a lion's den right before the kill. That was the first place I was handed a weapon. It wasn't anything special. A Glock 19 with the serial number scratched off. Cold in my palm. Heavy in a way no one warns you about. Lalo handed it to me without ceremony. "You're in, now," he said. "No turning back." The next 3 weeks were a blur of training. Not the military kind. This was cartel school. I learned how to wipe prints, how to speak in codes, how to watch people without being seen. They taught me to spot a tail in traffic, to switch license plates in under 60 seconds, to load weapons blindfolded. But nothing prepared me for my first job. It was supposed to be simple. A convoy, 4 trucks, armored, headed south toward Colima. I was to ride second vehicle, eyes open, mouth shut. Just a watcher, a ghost. The night before we left, there was a meeting in a warehouse outside Tlaquepaque. I remember the smell of gasoline and wet concrete. The trucks were parked in formation, engines idling. Men stood in circles exchanging radio codes, checking maps. Then the room changed. He walked in without a word, and everyone straightened their backs like soldiers. I didn't need to be told who he was. I could feel it in the way the air shifted. El Mencho. The man I had only heard about in whispers now stood 10 feet from me. Medium height, calm, unreadable. No gold chains, no flashy watch, just presence, like gravity. He listened to the plan, nodded once, then stepped away, pulling out a satellite phone. He spoke for 2 minutes. No one else dared interrupt. When he returned, everything changed. "Delay the shipment," he said. 48 hours. No one asked why. No one argued. Orders were orders. But I saw the looks, the confusion, the sudden fear. And when the news came 2 days later that federal forces had set up checkpoints on our route, I understood. At first, I thought Mencho had a gift, a sixth sense, a kind of drug lord intuition that let him see through the fog of war. But then I noticed something else. When he returned to the group that night, he didn't say, "I decided to delay." He said, "She said, wait. Not they. Not my team. She." And the moment he said it, a silence fell. A loaded silence. No one looked up. No one said a word. It was as if that pronoun carried the weight of death. I didn't know who she was, but the way everyone responded told me all I needed to know. She outranked the man they called the boss. That was the first time I felt it, not just the chill of danger, but the realization that we were all following a voice we couldn't see. That behind the convoys and rifles and bloody oaths, someone else was watching, deciding, moving the pieces. And her orders didn't come loud. They came soft, almost like a whisper. But every man in that room listened, including El Mencho. There was no blood oath, no ritual circle of fire, no tattoo to mark the moment. Just a quiet room, a cold chair, and a question. Are you ready to stop pretending you have a choice? It was Lalo who asked, same calm voice, same unreadable expression. He stood in front of a steel table inside an empty warehouse near Tonala. The air smelled like bleach and wet iron. In the corner, a man sat bound to a chair, head hanging, blood crusted on his lip. He's one of ours, Lalo said. At least he used to be. I didn't ask why he was tied up. I didn't ask what he did. I just stared at the pistol lying between us on the table, matte black silencer, attached magazine full. Lalo reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded paper. He placed it beside the gun. Direct orders, he said. From her. I hesitated. My throat dried. It wasn't the killing that made my hands shake. It was that piece of paper. Cream-colored, thick, almost elegant. On it, a single paragraph in cursive, delicate handwriting. Precise. Cold. He withheld product, lied about drop points, spoke to outsiders. This weakness cannot spread. At the bottom, no signature. Just a symbol, simple, feminine. A curved line like a whisper. This is her writing, I asked barely above a breath. Lalo didn't answer. He didn't need to. The man in the chair groaned. His eyes opened. For a second, I saw the same fear in him that had lived inside me for years. Not fear of death, fear of her. She knows, he whispered. Please, just tell her. I didn't mean to. The shot was louder than I expected. Even with the suppressor, it echoed in the cavernous room. One pull of the trigger. One moment. One life erased. I stood there, heart pounding, ears ringing. The silence that followed was heavier than the sound of the gun. Lalo nodded once, picked up the paper, slipped it back into his jacket. She watches everything he said, as if reading my thoughts. Even this. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I didn't eat. I sat on the rooftop of the safe house, chain-smoking, and staring at the city lights, wondering what I had just become. Not a soldier, not a killer. Something else. A tool. A message. I hadn't just passed a test. I had crossed a line, and I couldn't go back. That elegant handwriting haunted me. It didn't scream, it didn't threaten, but it spoke louder than any bullet. From that moment on, I knew that the true power inside the CJNG didn't wear gold chains or bark commands. She wrote them, and we obeyed. The first time I held a man down while another sliced his throat, I didn't flinch. That surprised me. I thought I'd vomit, shake, maybe cry after. But I didn't. I lit a cigarette. I waited for the gurgling to stop. And when it was over, I helped wrap the body in plastic like we were taking out the trash after a long day's work. That's what they don't tell you. The horror isn't in the killing. It's in how fast it becomes routine. I started running more convoys. Zapopan to Colima, Guadalajara to Tepic. I sat in the lead trucks, called out routes, delivered briefcases and barrels. Sometimes it was cash, sometimes chemicals, sometimes people. I never asked. That was the first rule. Obedience is stronger than loyalty. But something else began to shift. I started to notice a pattern. There were orders, and then there were her orders. She said delay. She doesn't want us in Nayarit. She prefers the shipment go through Sonora. That's how the commanders spoke, never naming her. Always in soft tones. like a ghost had entered the room. Even Mencho bowed to those words, especially Mencho. The men would nod, adjust, plans, erase chalkboards. No one questioned. And when I started asking quietly, I got looks. Warnings. One night in Michoacan, we had a traitor kneeling at the edge of a pit, tied, blindfolded, sobbing. His voice cracked as he begged. The commander beside me cocked his rifle, but before he pulled the trigger, his radio buzzed. A short sentence. She said, "Wait." The commander froze mid-motion, then lowered his gun. The man, traitor, snitch, coward, was untied and placed into the back of a black SUV. I burned with rage. We let him go. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. 2 days later, I saw that same man, clean-shaven, dressed in fresh clothes, sitting beside Mencho at a private meeting in a gated compound, laughing, pouring him tequila. He hadn't just been spared. He had been repurposed. That's when I understood she didn't just know things. She used them, like chess pieces, like wires in a bomb. She had eyes everywhere, ears in every room. And when she spoke, even killers listened. I began to wonder what she knew about me, my family, my thoughts, my fear. And more than once, I caught myself looking at my phone, even when it hadn't rung, as if she could call me, command me, erase me at any moment. There was no announcement, no picture on the wall, no corrido sung in her name, but her presence wrapped around everything. And I, whatever I thought I was just a blade waiting to be swung. They say power changes you. That's not true. Power doesn't change you. It reveals what you've been hiding all along. By my second year in the organization, I wasn't riding convoys anymore. I was organizing them. I coordinated safe houses, approved trusted routes, signed off on payments to police soldiers, customs agents. Every peso passed through hands like mine, dirty, calloused, untraceable. I had risen fast. Too fast. Mencho's lieutenants began to notice me. Some resented it. Others tried to pull me close. But none of them knew what I knew. None of them had seen the handwriting. It started with envelopes. Unmarked. Cream-colored. Always sealed. They'd arrive during meetings and shut the whole room down. Inside were notes, corrections, alterations. Sometimes entire new plans rewritten in that same delicate script I had seen the night of my test. She didn't use phones unless necessary. She used ink. Paper. Elegance. One night in Guadalajara, we were reviewing a list of monthly payouts, local police politicians, mid-level military commanders. The accountant was double-checking figures when he opened an envelope and turned white. "She corrected all of this," he mumbled. "It has to be redone. Now." No one argued. No one even spoke. We worked through the night. That same week, I was assigned to escort Mencho himself to a safe house in Zapopan. It was the first time I saw him nervous. He adjusted his collar, fixed his hair in the side mirror, spit into the dirt, then wiped his boots clean like a schoolboy heading into the principal's office. I had seen this man order executions with a wave. I had seen him laugh while people begged for their lives. But that night, he looked small. He walked inside the house alone. We waited outside. No one was allowed in. He was gone an hour. When he returned, he was silent. The lines on his face deeper, his voice lower. He handed me a new list of directives, canceled meetings, rerouted shipments, contacts to cut off. She said to move everything through Sonora, he said, and cut all communication with Nayarit. Effective immediately. No explanations, just a tone. And that tone meant obey or vanish. That was the moment I stopped believing in the myth of Mencho. He was feared, yes, respected, ruthless. But even he answered to her. From that day forward, I listened less to the men shouting orders and more to the silences between them. That's where her influence lived, in the pauses, the edits, the glances passed across a room when her name was implied but never spoken. They called her La Dama. Never more, never less. And whether she was in the room or not, she was always in control. There are moments when time doesn't slow down, it stops. The night I saw her face for the first time, I forgot how to breathe. It happened in Michoacan, inside a safe house tucked behind rows of sugarcane and silence. From the outside, it looked ordinary whitewashed walls, tin roof, metal gate, rusted by the rain. But once we stepped through the door, I knew we weren't in our world anymore. The air smelled of jasmine and leather-bound books. The floors were polished wood. Antique lamps cast soft light across oil paintings and heavy drapes. There was no gold, no marble, no cartel cliché. Only precision, only taste. And at the center of it all, she sat alone at a long mahogany table. La Dama. She looked nothing like the rumors. No diamonds, no perfume, no gun in her lap. Just a black blouse, gray slacks, and hair pulled into a tight knot, streaked with silver. She could have been a professor, a judge, a woman reading poetry in a cafe. But her eyes, cold, clear, calculating. The kind of gaze that doesn't look at you, but through you. Mencho was the first to speak. He barely got 2 words out before she lifted her hand, just a slight motion, not even a full gesture, and he stopped talking. Just like that. I had seen him silence entire rooms with a whisper order, executions with a glance. But in front of her, he was nothing more than a student waiting for his lesson. She opened a leather folder and began to speak. Calmly, without hesitation. She listed routes. Names of judges, mayors, colonels. She moved them like chess pieces. This one goes. That one stays. This judge has grown sloppy. He needs a reminder. No emotion, no ego, just strategy. And then she turned her eyes to us, one by one. She called out secrets. A lieutenant's mistress in Querétaro. A commander's illegitimate son studying in Arizona. A supplier who'd skimmed 2% off the top for 3 years. Nobody had spoken. Nobody had confessed. But she knew. A man beside me started shaking. Another bit his lip until it bled. When her eyes landed on me, I froze. She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. She smiled. Not kindly, not cruelly. Just enough to let me know she saw everything. That meeting lasted just under an hour. When it ended, no one spoke. No one asked questions. Mencho collected the documents, like a courier, bowed slightly, and walked out. As we left the house, I realized what had happened. This wasn't a meeting. It was an audit. And we were the assets. From that moment on, I stopped wondering if she was in control. She was. No bullets, no shouting. Just data leverage and eyes that saw deeper than fear. People think the most dangerous power in a cartel comes from bullets. That's wrong. True power isn't loud. It doesn't scream. It whispers. And everyone listens. La Dama didn't command armies. She didn't need to. She understood something deeper. Something most men in our world never grasp. You don't have to kill a man to own him. You just have to know what he's hiding. There was a businessman in Veracruz, rich, arrogant. The kind who paid late, argued over percentages, thought his bank accounts made him untouchable. Mencho wanted to send a team to remind him how things worked. She said no. Wait was all she ordered. A week later, the man received a sealed envelope. Inside were photos, nothing explicit, nothing illegal. Just images of his 17-year-old daughter at a private party. Smiling, dancing, vulnerable, Photos no one should have had. No threats. No note. Just proof that she knew everything. The man folded, transferred the payment that same night, doubled it. I watched it happen. Then came the politician, a senator from Sinaloa who had promised to push a law through Congress, something that would have opened new routes, protected certain shipments. But at the last minute, he resisted. Others wanted him gone. Dead. She invited him to a house near Tepic. I was on escort duty that day. I stayed in a room beside them, listening through the thin wall. Her voice was calm, not seductive, not angry, just surgical. She recited his entire career back to him. Every lie, every bribe, every offshore account. She mentioned a woman he had paid to disappear in 2004, a son he had denied in public but sent money to every Christmas. When she finished, there was silence, long and suffocating. Then his voice broken barely above a whisper. "What do you want?" 3 weeks later, he voted the way she told him to. That was her magic. Where we used guns, she used memory. Where we used fear, she used shame. And when we failed, she used us. I started to see it everywhere. Every decision, every move, every reshuffling of power, it all traced back to her. Not in name, not in signature, but in pattern, in fingerprints left without touching. Even Mencho wasn't immune. In meetings, she could silence him with a look. I saw him raise his hand to speak once, only to lower it before a word escaped his mouth. She didn't glare. She didn't threaten. She simply blinked slowly. That was enough. We were lions in our own heads. She was the cage, and we didn't even realize we were inside it until the door shut behind us. The deeper I got, the more I stopped fearing her presence. I feared her absence, because if she wasn't watching you, you were already dead. I thought I could outsmart her. For months, I planned it, quietly, carefully. I moved cash in small amounts, bought documents from a retired federal in Querétaro, established a new identity, new name, new life, even a backstory. I rehearsed my escape route 1,000 times. Every turn, every gas stop, every lie I'd tell on the way out. I trusted no one. I told no one. And yet she knew. She always knew. A week before I was set to disappear, a fellow sicario, an old friend, confided in me over a beer. "I'm out," he whispered, taking the wife and kids, heading north. The next morning, they found him hanging from a bridge, a note stabbed into his chest with a switchblade. She doesn't forgive. I kept going anyway. I convinced myself I was different, smarter, invisible. The night I left, I told them I was transporting a truck to Colima. Routine. Boring. I had my fake ID and my boot money sewn into the lining of my jacket. The sun hadn't risen yet when I hit the road. I didn't look back. For 5 hours, I believed I had made it. Then came the checkpoint. Not military, not federal. Ours. Black SUVs. Faces I recognized, men I had trained, bled with protected. They didn't shout. They didn't ask questions. Just opened my door and took my gun. They brought me to a warehouse I'd never seen before. Remote. Cold. Quiet. And there she was, La Dama, sitting at a table as if she'd been waiting all along. There was no rage in her eyes, no theatrics, just that unbearable calm. She laid out everything. The money I'd moved, the printer I'd used, the federal agent's real name, the safe house I'd contacted in Tijuana. She listed each step like reading a grocery list. I couldn't speak. Then she pushed a pistol toward me again and offered a choice. "You can disappear," she said softly. "Start over. Leave this behind." My heart jumped. It sounded too easy. But first she added, You'll complete one final task, a gift, for your freedom. Behind me, 5 men were tied to chairs, duct tape across their mouths, government investigators. I recognized one. He had followed me once outside a nightclub. I didn't know their names, but she did. She wanted information. She wanted it all. I did it. Not because I enjoyed it, not because I agreed, because in that moment there was no other option, no way out. I interrogated them. I broke them. And when it was over, when there was nothing left to take, she stood, handed me a leather bag full of cash and said, "You're free." But I wasn't. You don't walk away from something like that. You carry it. In your skin, in your teeth, in your sleep. She let me leave with my body intact, but my soul stayed behind. I changed my name, my face, my story. I moved across borders with forged papers and silent prayers. I paid cash. I stayed off grids. I never called home. I became a ghost, just another man with a scar he doesn't talk about and a past that doesn't belong to anyone. To the world I vanished, but inside she never let me go. Some nights I still wake up in sweat, convinced there's someone at the door. I check the locks 3 times before I lie down. I park facing the exit. I memorize every face in every room. But it's not the gunman I fear. It's her voice. Calm, unhurried, precise, like a scalpel across the brainstem. Even now I hear it, when I hesitate, when I lie. When I reach for anything that feels like control, I hear her voice reminding me I never had any. I tried starting over. I worked in a warehouse under a false identity, slept on a cot, kept my head down. But even there, the shadows found me. A man asked about a shipment once, and I froze just for a second. That second was enough to remind me I could never truly escape. Because it's not the blood that binds you. It's the silence afterward. It's the moment you realize you're not afraid of dying anymore because someone already owns your death. I saw Mencho on TV once. Footage from a raid. His face blurred. His name repeated like he was some god of destruction. And I laughed. Because I had seen him silenced with a single glance. Because I had watched him wait for permission to speak. Because I knew who held the leash. La Dama. She had no territory, no army, no song written in her honor. But she didn't need them. She had memory, secrets, and time. And in the world we lived in, that was more lethal than any bullet. You want to know the truth, the real truth. The CJNG was never his. It was hers. She built it, controlled it, refined it. She moved its pieces like a composer directing an orchestra of ghosts. Mencho was the instrument. She was the hand. And if you're hearing this, if my voice has reached you, then maybe it means she's letting me speak. Or maybe it means I'm already gone. Either way, remember this power isn't about who shouts the loudest. It's about who whispers last.